into his brain. Welcome into his frequency. Enter at your own risk. Come be at peace with me. Ask the Paul, where we rise and don't fall.
Welcome back to another episode of Baxter's Buzz. I am your host, Baxter E. Hall. Welcome to my brain. Welcome to my frequency. Enter at your own risk. I have the special guest with me. She is a risk manager by trade. She now runs wellness. She is the founder and CEO of Beyond Well.
Go Beyond Well.
Go Beyond Well. Princess Castleberry. Princess, welcome to Baxter's Buzz. It's so good to see you.
Yes, it's great to see you as always.
Yeah.
Bump into each other all the time, so I'm glad to finally be a guest.
Yeah, and we talked about the transition. I mentioned risk management because that's how I met you and that's how I know you. And we'll talk about you gave me some really, really sound advice when I first started at Capnick, but talk about Go Beyond Well, what the vision is and what you've been doing.
Yeah, so Go Beyond Well is an iteration of, first, it's an iteration of my career, right? Go Beyond Well, just in a nutshell, provides professional speaking, wellness and risk training workshops, and also a host of consulting services. And so, including some coaching that goes into the consulting piece of it. And so, the premise of Go Beyond Well is that there is a collective responsibility for wellness, and that I want to help people create the lives and the environments that are just going to help them thrive. Now, you mentioned my background in risk management, and I do not see wellness as distinct from risk. I see it as another iteration. Now, and my part of my background, but I'll share just for the audience's sake, is that I spent the first 20 years in corporate America as a traditional risk manager, but of many varieties. So I started out in a really conservative, traditional way, which is at an insurance brokerage firm, one of the largest in the world, in fact. And I learned the nuances of insurance program management, global risks, everything from negotiating with carriers and presenting to clients. And that experience gave me a springboard into in-house risk management, because I didn't want to be on the selling side. And I love the service element, but I didn't want to sell risk management tools or products. I wanted to go in-house to a risk management team. And at the time I started my career, those spots were really coveted and held for people who had really high levels of experience, because you're inside of a company making decisions. And I was really fortunate early in my career to be part of an incredible in-house risk management team at Pulte Homes. So I got all of my start in Fortune 500 companies, and I got to do every single thing from training people on contract tools and contract management and negotiation to how to position the company well from a risk and indemnity perspective within the contract. I managed global insurance programs. And later in my career, I actually ended up transitioning and working for Kelly Services in the staffing industry, which that exploded my experience, because I got a chance to touch dozens and dozens of industries and issues, and work on things from safety to, again, every element of liability that you can experience within the contract, business continuity and disaster planning, cybersecurity planning. And I was for 11 years part of Kelly's enterprise risk management team. So that's my foundation.
Yeah. And it's interesting because now you have access and exposure and experience to these different companies. And so you're learning, you're still managing risk and assessing risk, but you're assessing different parts of risk in different industries, and it probably really sped up your learning curve, right? As far as just like the amount of like knowledge that you were able to attain.
Yeah, well, seriously, the foundation of everything I do, whether, all those subject matters I named off, employment compliance, cyber, all those areas, the foundation is the same, which is the core and essence of the risk management process, which is to identify risks. And there's lots of ways to identify, but you identify, you assess, you start to develop solutions around how you're going to address or mitigate the risk, and then you implement solutions and you monitor them. And that is, like, in a nutshell, the basic risk management process. And, like, if I even take a step back, because some people will ask me, well, what do you mean risk? You're talking about finance. And my simple definition, I've used this for years, Baxter, is that a risk is the possibility of harm or loss to something of value, plain and simple. And when you say it that way, people can see what risk is at a company level. Companies value their people, their profits, their property, their assets, right? Everything that makes their businesses go, their reputations. But as individuals, we have and we manage lots and lots of risks. And what people today, the gap that I saw that prompted me to, go into the direction of wellness, is that people do not understand how intricately linked their personal wellness is to the wellness of an organization and the outcomes of the business. They
Talk
don't
about that. Talk about that.
Yeah. And so, for example, I spent many years working, again, in insurance and dealing with claims. So let's just take a look at, workers' compensation claims. And this was something I saw all the time because we had lots of customers in the warehousing space. You would see forklift accidents, right? Or high-low accidents. And if somebody gets into a high-low accident, the first thing in most companies' protocol is to drug test that individual, right? They do drug and alcohol testing. It's mandatory for, according to most protocols. And let's say, for example, you find somebody has been drinking or using some sort of illegal substance that is likely a cause of the accident. Now, that person will just be disciplined according to whatever the rules are of that business, up to and including losing their job through termination. But what I was finding is that nobody was taking time to figure out why that individual had the accident, not just why the person was intoxicated or high, but what circumstance was happening in that individual's life. And more often than not, people are going through death, divorce, some type of depression, anxiety that is causing certain behaviors. And I did not see enough explicit discussion, thought leadership on how these personal challenges at home come into the workplace. And another example I see all the time, Baxter, is that people who have issues with drawing boundaries in the workplace, resolving simple or even complex conflicts in the workplace, also have those issues at home. So I wanted to dedicate myself to teaching those skills, but I do it in the context of work. But I do it through the lens of, okay, as a business, we need to start caring about what our employees experience in all areas of life. And if we address them and help them to solve the wellness challenges that are impacting their personal lives, those behaviors will migrate to the workplace and we'll be better off. And I think, this is my, the world according to Princess. I believe very strongly that the workplace has a collective responsibility for individual wellness. Plain and simple.
Well, I love how you painted that. Me as a consultant, a broker, the way that I try to paint those pictures and make it clear for clients and prospective clients if they don't see the value, right? Simply, a healthier employee is a employee that's going to stay longer and they're going to be less expensive, right? So even if you don't buy into or you haven't had the experience to understand, like, we got to take care of this whole person, knowing that this person is being taken care of, whether mentally, physically, spiritually, at home and at work, they're less likely to miss days. They're less likely to want to, look for another job, and they're less likely to be diagnosed with something, that may harm, ultimately harm them, but from an organization standpoint, where you're losing money, you're losing this resource that and so the the thought of and the notion of like whole person, taking care of the whole person, it's kind of become like a new thing, and it's so simple. It's like, why didn't we think about those things before?
Well, this is more world according to Princess. For a really long time, businesses tried to establish a certain type of social contract that centered the business. We heard things, we saw mantras, we shared it on LinkedIn that said, put the company before yourself, put the team before you. And that was at the time when companies started to say that, that was a really big pendulum swing. People had already felt the pressure of work, right? We were already conscious. We were very conscious. And if you look back 5 years ago, the rights that we enjoy today in the workplace, people did not have all these rights and flexibility. We know that a lot of that was born out of the pandemic, and we don't have to rehash that. Everybody knows that. So we know how the last few years have changed things and accelerated wellness in the consideration. But the fact remains, businesses had been pumping this mantra and piling this mantra on people that the team and everything had to come ahead of you. And the reality is, when we do not take care of ourselves, when we do not secure our oxygen masks, we do not make the best decisions for ourselves. And that turns into not making the best decisions for others. Now, what happened during the pandemic is that people, for the first time in our lifetime, in our parents, grandparents' lifetimes, had an opportunity to be still for a prolonged period of time. That amount of stillness that the pandemic created does not happen, right? Maybe it only happens every 100 years. But when people got a chance to be alone, isolated, and very still, they were triggered. Everything started to come to light. And you see this very wild and in some ways dangerous pendulum swing in the complete opposite direction. And the new mantra has become self-care over all other care. And I don't necessarily agree with that, even as an advocate of my own self-care, and as somebody who teaches ways to practically create those types of environments for others. I think that so much emphasis on self-care can be dangerous. I think it actually leads to what we know through research is that one of the number one wellness challenges today is isolation and loneliness. There is this notion born that the company will not take care of me. No one will take care of me, so I have to do it all myself. And in my opinion, that creates an added burden on an individual who was already struggling for balance.
Yeah.
And there's so much opportunity. So my approach and one of my core values is just collective responsibility. You shouldn't have to exercise self-care 100% of the time. There should be a balance to it. And individuals, we definitely have a huge part of it, but so do our colleagues and so do the businesses that we support. Period.
Yeah, no, you're right. Like you said, that pendulum swing, it's so extreme. And yeah, our generation, the generation that's after us, they've experienced either themselves or their parents sort of be uh, let down by organizations, right?
Yeah.
Where we've seen
Great way to
massive
put it.
layoffs. We've seen these things where, you know, latchkey kids, and you gotta get a good job, and good benefits, right, and all these things, and then you saw, and then these folks saw their parents suffer from these same jobs that they kind of put in front of everything else.
Yeah.
And so there is an adjustment period that needs to be made, where there needs to be a balance. and hopefully it's swinging back towards the middle and it's not so extreme. But before we wrap, I want to just show you some love. When we first met, you were incredibly gracious to me. I had really just started at Capnick, and you gave me so much game and like so many things to kind of think about as far as my approach and how I wanted to sort of the type of class I wanted to talk to and do business with and prospect, and how important it was to sort of align yourself with things that you felt strongly about, right? And not try to be everything to everyone. And so I never forgot that. So I want to say thank you for that. You didn't know me. You just, decided to pour into me, and I do appreciate that, and I've never forgotten that. So thank you.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm a fast friend. That's something else. That's a personal value. I believe in fast friends. So I will meet somebody day one and talk to them like we grew up together and give you all types of sometimes unsolicited advice. But the premise behind that is that I do try my best, as crazy as the world is, to assume positive intent. And I will pour into a person because that might be the only time I ever see you, and I don't know what was impacting you. So maybe that quick fill up is all that you got in that moment, or that is also is tied to my sense of self, right? That's me self-actualizing. That's me becoming and living in who I am. And so I try to do that everywhere I go, even if I just met a person. And sometimes fast friendships form, or sometimes it's just in passing. You never see the person, they never talk to you again, but it's still a great interaction. So I just appreciate it. So thank you for being receptive to my walk up unsolicited. Let me tell you how to structure your career.
No, I appreciate that. Tell folks how they can get in touch with you, coaching, consulting, the speaking aspect.
So a couple ways, through my website, obviously, gobeyondwell.com. The big news is for those corporations that are out there looking for mic dropping speakers, I am now WBE and MBE certified. So I'm coming for you in your conferences too, like in your little conferences too. But I swear I live on LinkedIn. So you can always send me a message on LinkedIn. I'm always posting, always sharing ideas, and just love to interact with people there. So hit me up.
Cool. She is the founder of Go Beyond Well, the incomparable, the dynamic, the advice giver, unsolicited advice giver.
That's not good for coaching.
No, Princess, thank you so much for joining me. And on behalf of Princess, I just want to let everyone know who's watching or listening that you are all capable. You just need to embrace your own frequency.
That's right.
And until next time, peace.
Peace.
Welcome into his brain. Welcome into his frequency. Enter at your own risk. Come be at peace with me.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't already, please hit the like button. Please subscribe, share, and also hit that notification button as well. Thank you so much.
Financial literacy to authentic Black history.